What's the pettiest reason you've rejected someone? Story 1. Went on a first date with someone that was out of my league. Couldn't believe my luck. On our way to dinner, everything was going fine and the conversation was flowing. She seemed really into me. Suddenly she screamed at me to stop the car. Not pull over. Stop right here, right now, immediately, in the middle of a 4-lane major road. Just before I came to a complete stop in the middle of this busy road, she opened the passenger door and tried to jump out. If a cop saw all this, it probably would look like she was escaping a kidnapping. She jumped out of the car and played Frogger across 2 lanes of traffic, and I sat there stunned, with my passenger door hanging open into traffic. A few seconds later, she came running back with something under her arm. I couldn't see what it was in the mirror. She had a huge smile on her face, and as she climbed back into the car, she squealed with delight as she showed me what it was. An effing hubcap. She said it was to commemorate our first date, and that we could share custody of it. I could have it first. That was our first and last date. Opinion. This is a perfect example of how the execution of an action is more important than the action itself. Story 2. She would call me every single day like 2 minutes after I clocked out of work. I asked her several times to just give me an hour before she called. Let me go home first. I had a 45-minute drive home. That was my decompression time. Blast the radio and get over the day's BS. She couldn't do it. That hour was too much to ask. But I couldn't wait to hear your voice, she said. So I broke it off. My friends tell me that's incredibly petty. I feel like she can't respect simple boundaries, and it will be a big problem later. Opinion. Boundaries are definitely not petty. They are essential for maintaining respect and healthy relationships. Story 3. Went on a day hike with him. Halfway through the hike, we came upon a spotted skunk. I started backing off, and when he asked why, I told him it was a skunk. He argued with me, saying it was a weasel, not a skunk, because skunks have stripes, and that I obviously didn't know what I was talking about. When I kept insisting, he said, "I'll prove it to you." As he started walking towards it, famous last words, lol. Anyway, he gets sprayed obviously. We have to cut our hike short, and I make him ride in the bed of my pickup on the way home. I called it off after that mainly because he didn't listen to me. And I hate being told I don't know what I'm talking about, when I know what the facts are. Opinion. That's not petty. That's ensuring any potential offspring have the brain power to thrive and survive. Story 4. He thought Vikings were mythical creatures created by Hollywood. Then talked about how this TV show Tudors was interesting, and not knowing that Henry VIII was a real king, although I do understand that the TV show is not faithful to history at 100%. Also, he stated that math was not real, because one apple is not the same as another apple. And how math can explain that? Basically too ignorant, way too ignorant. It was complicated to have a decent conversation. Opinion. Not petty at all. Who would want someone with a negative IQ as a romantic partner? Story 5. My perpetually single friend has turned rejecting people into a bit of a sport. I'll Tinder for her, which is all sorts of amusing. But one day, I had actually met someone for lunch and thought, here's someone that's kind of her type. I wonder if she would be interested. I ended up pulling up his website and showing her some pictures of the guy. We get to about the 6th photo in of 2 of his cats in a tree house. She explains, his cats look bratty. Yeah, well, that's why you're single. Still, 6 years later. Opinion. That's fine, as long as she doesn't mind being single. Some people really don't mind it. They live happily on their own. Story 6. Years ago when Tinder was semi-new, I went on a date with a dude who forgot to disclose that he had epilepsy. I didn't have a problem with that. The problem started when he started having a seizure, so I got help and called an ambulance. He complained because I called an ambulance, left me several voicemails the following day screeching at me for being a horrible person, leaving him with an ambulance bill. Edit. I live in America, where the medical system is a joke. When the ambulance arrived and helped my date through the seizure, he was okay and aware of what happened after that. They had asked him, "Do you have any medication we should know about, etc.?" And he said, "Yes, I have a prescription, but I don't like to take it. I haven't taken it in a few weeks." I was completely blindsided, yet understanding of how someone would refuse to take their medication, but geez. Opinion. Imagine being financially doomed because every time you have a seizure, someone calls an ambulance. America's healthcare system is wild. It's his fault for not giving you a heads up though. Story 7. She showed up to our date in sweatpants and flip-flops. In the middle of January, she mentioned she hadn't showered in more than a few days. I gave her another shot because I figured maybe she was just dealing with a lot or going through a hard time. She did it the second time too, and then proceeded to tell me her brother was a registered ass offender. It wouldn't have been a problem if she hadn't invited me over for dinner. The whole thing was bizarre. Opinion. This doesn't sound petty. It sounds like the right move. Hygiene is definitely the one thing I cannot overlook. Story 8. We spent our first date browsing various record shops in Manhattan and Greenwich Village. I took him to my favorite ones. I told him what Elton John album I thought was best. He disagreed and was adamant I was very wrong. He was going to a party at his brother's after and didn't believe in subways, as his dad was one of the victims of 9/11. The party was 100 blocks away in Brooklyn. Decided to walk him to the party despite having mild asthma and severe post-nasal drip. Once there at the door, he decided it wouldn't work out because he couldn't put our differences aside. His last words were, "Do you really believe Honky Chateau is his best work?" "Of course I do." He had this horrified, disgusted face on and said, "Yeah, no, that's just wrong. Not gonna work out since you have poor taste." Literally got rejected over Honky Chateau, but it's okay. My father-in-law thinks that album is awesome. Opinion. People are weird. Story 9. He told me that he knew Latin, and as a classicist, mainly Greek, but I know Latin too. This was one of the things that made me agree to go on a date with him. I thought that even if I didn't like him, we could have some interesting conversations. And I'm always excited to make new classics friends. At the dinner, I laughed about something and said, "In vino veritas." What? You know, in vino veritas. Turns out he didn't know Latin at all. He had lied and thought he could get away with it. There was no third date. And although I didn't say it, it was clear he knew exactly why. Opinion. What a silly thing to lie about when it's so easy to get caught. That's happened to me a few times too, and it's wild how the person who lied gets mad at you for pointing it out. Story 10. I was 13 and had been dating a girl for about 2 months. We were playing Jenga and I noticed that she only drew from the middle, never once from the sides. It made me feel like she was timid and boring. That was the moment I lost attraction to her and broke up with her, not long after. All these years later, I am timid and boring and she's absolutely wild. Opinion. Turns out she wasn't timid and boring after all. She was just playing to win. Story 11. I was the one rejected, but the reason I was given was, I've been rejected a lot. I want to know what it feels like to reject someone. Their best friend told me they were interested in me too. Opinion. I've suffered through enough emotional trauma that I want to start spreading my own. Yep, that's petty. Story 12. This dude was super sweet and had a lot of good qualities. He was a plumber and casually admitted to me that sometimes he would bite and clean his nails after work and taste the remnants of what he touched that day. I could not get over that and had to move on. Edit. A few people have mentioned it's not petty, but I feel like it is, and I should probably expand on that. Things were going really great. Like, he said all the right things and he was a genuinely good person with similar interests. Up until the point he said that I was considering moving forward with the relationship. Also, I see nail biting as a habit that could be changed and even practicing better hygiene, which he mostly did except for those nails. Once he said it, and he was serious, my views and feelings for him changed. It's just one thing that completely turned me off from him. And thanks for the funny comments. I'm at work and needed a good laugh. Opinion. Plumbing sounds all fun and games when you're talking about pipes and imagining clean drinking water flowing through them. But when you realize that most plumbing deals with wastewater and raw sewage, it's one of the nastiest things I've ever heard. He is sick. Story 13. Her toenails were so long that whenever she was nearby, you could hear clicking from the ground as if she were a dog. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this to become so popular. Thanks for the awards, kind strangers. And yes, she is real, and I am not making this up. For anyone asking how she functioned, I guess she was okay walking around with fungal nails and one shoe size above her normal. The nails kinda curved down so they would fit snugly into the shoe. Opinion. Yeah, that's disturbing. Story 14. I broke things off once because of the size of her teeth. They were tiny compared to the size of her mouth. It shouldn't have been an issue, but it creeped me out. I don't know why, but it was one of those things that I couldn't ignore and gradually became the only thing I could see. Grown woman with a mouth full of baby teeth. Just weird. Opinion. Everyone's entitled to their preferences. I'm sure she will find someone who doesn't mind that. Story 15. I went on a match date years ago with this super sweet pilot. I live in a Navy town. He was really into me and we got along great. But he had the tiniest hands. Not like medically tiny hands, but just smaller than I was used to in a partner. I'm short-statured, but I have bigger hands and feet, and I just keep staring at his hands gripping his beer glass the whole night thinking about what holding hands with him would be like, and how monstrous my hands would look in comparison. And I just couldn't do it. Had to turn him down for a second date. Edit. I've seen a bunch of people comment about their own small hands. I'm sorry, it wasn't my intention to make people with small hands feel bad. I think my issue was rooted in my insecurities about my own hands. They're not super feminine and kind of chubby. I have like 10-year-old boy's hands, scaled up to have an 8-ring size. His hands were perfectly fine, and I am sure someone without insecurities about being bigger than their mate in general, and who wasn't a total weirdo like me, wouldn't have even noticed. Opinion, you win. I went through the whole thread and this is definitely the pettiest. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the bell button to receive notifications to my latest videos.